Armed with jungle gear and survey maps, Whitaker and photographer Kenny Lennox entered the jungle at 5:55 one morning, just before the sunup. They were on a patch of land opposite the beach where Charles and Diana were staying. Says Whitaker, "We crawled, carrying a lens the size of a bloody howitzer for a solid hour and a half. By 7:50 a.m. we were in position, a half-mile across the water from the beach." Oh my word. Finally, Diana appeared at 11:20. When she turned up in a bikini, it was too good to be true. We also knew we'd be in trouble. Lennox started shooting. Diana was rubbing suntan oil on the prince's back. "Sensational," I kept saying to Kenny. "I've never done anything as intrusive in my life." But it was a journalistic high. I've never had such a buzz. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jess. And if you're new, then welcome. I'd like to earn your subscription today. Well, I'm kind of informally dressed and I hope you'll forgive it. I am in crazy mode. We have class starting this week and I'm a tutor. And then also I just got back from a backpacking trip and I haven't unpacked my bag. And also I'm doing 75 hard, which means I'm a crazy lady. But I didn't want to leave you guys without some compelling and fantastic videos to watch. So today our video is going to be this. It is Time Magazine, Royalty versus the Press, and the date on this magazine is February 28th, 1983. So very fascinating. Some of the very things we've been talking about in Palace Papers. This article was incredibly prescient, actually. To be in 1983 talking about these things is an interesting one, and I have not read it. So whenever I go to these, I just open them up and start reading them with you. So that is what we are going to do. It says on the cover, Lady Diana is the superstar of Palace Dallas, a long-running, real-life British soap opera. Its central theme, royalty versus the press. Another chapter opens as the Queen visits the New World. So we're going to read what they had to say about this in Time Magazine in 1983. What did they think about royalty versus the press? Here we have the beautiful, young, innocent Diana there. We have her again here. And then a large photo here of her in the back of a car. And I'm just going to read. It says, royalty versus the pursuing press. In stalking Diana, Fleet Street strains the rules. Someone will do it. Some rube of an American photographer, strangling in the only necktie he owns, will shout, "Hey, Queen!" Some reporter, his thought process is numbed by majesty, will panic and address her first, which is not done, and then compound his blunder by asking her views on Prince Andrew's American girlfriend, former soft porn actress, Koo Stark. Oh my goodness, Andrew was already showing his creepery back in 1983. Of course he was. Somebody will break commonly observed protocol. Royals are not to be photographed taking nourishment. And shoot a picture of her doing the unthinkable to a Parker House roll. No such amiably meant awkwardness, however, could spoil the month-long Royal Road show that began last week in Jamaica and proceeded to the Cayman Islands, to Mexico, and on toward the wilds of California. See following story. So we may have multiple articles to have to get through from this magazine. We're just going to do the one today if we can get through all of it. Queen Elizabeth II is nearly unflappable as star and stage manager of the Windsor family troupe, and her husband Prince Philip, though he sometimes indulges in grumpy asides, has a useful comic gift and a scene-saving knack for improvisation. Jamaicans last week admiringly recalled an occasion during the royal couple's 1975 visit when one profoundly confused male official approached the Queen and instead of bowing, curtsied. The prince to help the man out of his embarrassment. Good-humoredly curtsied back. Queen and consort played expertly to easy audiences in the Caribbean and faced a Mexican public eager for distraction from its peso troubles. At week's end, the royal couple could look forward to their accustomed favorable reviews from royalty-dazzled Democrats in the U.S. How welcome the good notices will be. The fact is that those at home have caused great consternation in recent weeks. And what seems most surprising is that much of the press rancor has lashed about the lovely head of the nation's new royal sweetheart, the Princess of Wales. It's interesting that so far we are down to here in the article, and she's only now being mentioned, but look what all the photos are about. The stories are about the Queen and Prince Philip, at least to begin with, but all we get are photos of Diana. It gives insight as to the way that she was what sold the magazines. Shy Di, it says, Fleet Street's raucous tabloids, whose scuffling reporters and photographers first caught and transmitted the Shy Di craze, now clearly believe that the princess is the creation and rightful property of the press. Ooh. The newspapers praise or torment her according to their own royal whims and rage when she balks at posing prettily. Diana is in the acutely uncomfortable position of being the world's most gawked at celebrity, bigger than Streisand, bigger than the Beatles, according to veteran London Sun photographer Arthur Edwards. Fanciful stories about her that allege illness, marital squabbles, or other bad behavior are weapons in British newspaper circulation wars. Freelance monkeys, paparazzi, can make unexpected windfalls with snatched pictures. Anyone can do anything, in fact, except throttle down a vast publicity engine that at times has seemed to be howling out of control. Britain has never seen such alarums as sustained as these before. Since Diane appeared on the scene, the unwritten rules between the palace and the press have collapsed under the stampede for news. The palace press office has appealed to editors, but any truce that is called gets broken quickly. Chasing royals is like a drug, an addiction, says writer Ashley Walton of the Daily Express. The Queen's press secretary, Michael Shea, mutters about sanctions, but the Tower of London is open only to tourists, not prisoners. A new wave of hysteria has gripped the more sensational press, he laments. Anything to do with any aspect of the royal family, no matter how minute, is treated as a huge news story. The royal family, meanwhile, can do little except schedule their usual tours and hope for less capricious coverage. This month, the Queen and Philip in the New World. Next month, Charles, Diana, and baby William in Australia and New Zealand. Of course, that was the one tour that was viewed as absolutely successful, and reportedly that they were very in love throughout that tour. Anne in Pakistan in May, where she will visit a refugee camp near the Afghan border. Last week, it was disclosed that while Diana stayed behind and carried on with her regular schedule, Charles had just spent a week milking cows, delivering a calf, and building stone fences on a tenant farm he owns in Cornwall. At the end, he gave an exclusive interview to Donald Simpson, agriculture writer for the Western Morning News. The labor had been hard, he said, and his back hurt, but the farm breakfasts had been splendid and the rural values sound. He said he came to know the cows well by their udders. I think being here has restored my sanity. That's interesting. There is something about being out in the country that does restore your sanity, doesn't it? I just got back from a backpacking trip, and one of the younger guys on the trip remarked that he really liked being away from his phone for the last 36 hours, that he just noticed it's really nice not to pick up your phone constantly. And of course, this was all written before the smartphone, but the ways that we interact with data, with constant intake of information, with constantly being in touch with everybody all the time, and everybody having a snap at us any moment. They can just say something that inserts itself into our day. It's a very different way of existing than has ever been. And even this way of existing needed that back to nature experience. Being on the land does help one get a sense of proportion, much better than being stuck in the city. Charles said. Charles is an outdoorsman, and the farm stay was thoroughly in character. But it is also true that his week evoked the kind of symbolism that maintains the necessary royal illusion that his family speaks for Britain, though not about government or anything else controversial, that they are mysterious and unapproachable, though much like me and thee, and that their position is awesome, though they can no longer single-handedly send armies into the field. Charles's performance was good, sound, royal theater, of the kind not seen by the British in some months. Lately, in fact, the Queen has seemed to be presiding over a soap opera, a kind of intricate Palace Dallas, as the joke now goes in London. Even the birth in June of a healthy baby boy, Prince William, to Charles and Diana, did not prevent last year from taking on the quality of sloppily written royal melodrama. The Queen's boudoir at Buckingham Palace was invaded early one morning by a man. Oh, I've heard about this. Listen, I can't believe we get to listen to this. This is so fun. Who weirdly sat on her bed by making conversation. Her personal bodyguard resigned after confessing to consorting with a homosexual prostitute. I had no idea that that's why he got in. Her Majesty's second son, Prince Andrew, 23, flew a helicopter in the Falklands War, then returned to resume a romance with the beauteous Koo, who had appeared nude in such films as Cruel Passion. When the two tried to sneak off to Mystique, the Caribbean hideaway where Princess Margaret had dallied with pop singer Roddy Llewellyn a few years ago, they shocked right-thinking Britons. Oh my word. So here's actually a photo of Koo. Here's the Queen and Andrew, and she bans Koo. Wow. It says, the Queen Mother, 82, is a great favorite of the press and indeed of everyone in Britain, and the Queen and Philip are treated with solid respect. But their only daughter, Princess Anne, 32, is surly to the press and has earned the nickname Her Royal Rudeness. Oh, how weird, because now she's seen as just the consummate royal. She does all the engagements. She outworks everybody. She never complains. So I suppose she maybe got this report and righted that ship between then and now, because she is not seen this way at all in the present day. She and her husband, Captain Mark Phillips, were the center of a swirl of divorce rumors, thus far apparently baseless, and she horrified everyone while on her own American tour by refusing to gurgle appreciatively. Growl was what she did over the birth of sweet William. Naff off. An upper-class vulgarism is gaining popularity around the world, largely through Anne's efforts. It was the Princess of Wales, however, shy Di, the radiant, misty darling of the tabloids, who drew the blackest headlines. Only 7 months after William's birth, the princess was being criticized as a spoilt brat, a fiend, and a monster. Charles was said to be desolate that a divorce was not possible for the future King of England. Diana's spendthrift shopping. I mean, y'all, this is 1983 talking about divorce in prominent papers. This is no tabloid. For this to be printed here is shocking because they didn't get a divorce, I don't believe, until the 90s. 83 is so early. I had no idea that divorce rumors swirled that early. Diana's spendthrift shopping, reportedly at the rate of some $1,500 a week, supposedly dismayed him. Her increasing thinness, which had seemed enchantingly graceful, was briefly depicted as anorexia nervosa. Then an American psychiatrist warned that Diana, on the basis of a stress evaluation test he had invented, had an 80% chance of becoming ill. The press became incensed at her behavior on a skiing holiday with Charles in Liechtenstein and Austria. In defiance, she pulled her ski cap down over her forehead and refused to pose sweetly for pictures. Nasty stuff, even for the lowbrow British tabloids, which are famous for their gaudy misbehavior. The main disturbers of the piece, jostling brashly for sensation and circulation among London's 10 major dailies and 8 major Sunday papers, are the Sun and Star, the Express, the Mirror, and the News of the World, which I've learned through the book was run by Piers Morgan, is that right? Or he was just a reporter for it, I'm not sure. But London's newspapers were only part of the journalistic funhouse that Lady Diana Spencer wandered into so unconcernedly when she began her romance with Prince Charles and the rest of the world. Vast numbers of commoners, especially in countries that are safely Republican, clearly are nostalgic monarchists, if only at the Cinderella level, and they like to read about royalty. 2 magazines in Britain, Majesty and Monthly Royalty, and one in France, Point de Vue, Images du Monde, print stories about nothing else. Publisher Peter Shepherd of Majesty, which is aimed at the fiercely royalist granny market, said that his staid publication, 1981, had a circulation of 55,000, tried a mildly critical story on Princess Anne a few months ago, drew fire in quavering handwriting from irate readers, and hastily returned to its usual reverence. Until only a few years before Diana became a worldwide obsession, however, royal watching was no more than a part-time, modestly profitable journalistic sideline, like writing about stamp collecting. Princess Margaret's doomed love affair in the 1950s with divorced man, group captain Peter Townsend, and Grace Kelly's excessive wedding in 1956 were exceptions. Early examples of royal watching carried round the bend of lunacy, but each story eventually died a natural death after months of gorgeous blather. Nothing of the sort is happening to the press frenzy surrounding the Princess of Wales, which shows no sign of dying either a natural death or one imposed by the exasperated Michael Shea. One reason may be that at a time when television is creating no new personalities and movie actors labor to be anti-celebrities, readers and feeders of popular press in Europe and the US are hungry for steady coverage of glittering personages. A succession of less than solemn stories has kept royals in the news. There was the pretty but too available Princess Caroline of Monaco and her succession of lounge lizards, the Netherlands Prince Bernard and his taste for Lockheed money, Princess Margaret and her unsuitable companions, and until 2 years ago, Prince Charles circulating amongst polo matches with an impressive succession of smashing young women. Yet these are ordinary immortals, not superstars. Only Jackie Kennedy Onassis has attracted the same kind of attention that now afflicts Diana. Some sort of strange myth-making or myth-breaking is going on, half real and instinctive, and half calculated and phony. Suzanne Lowry, a writer for London's Sunday Times, asks, what is this endless fairy tale we are all so avidly following, the press eagerly producing, and the palace so concerned to censor, or at least edit? What is a princess? What is one for? The best answer seems to be that a princess is for looking at. Neither Diana nor any other member of the royal family has much function when out of sight. Without press coverage, the royal family would be little more than rich, overdressed people in big houses. Lowry continues with a distinctly unsettling truth. What Diana clearly didn't understand when she took that fateful step with all the boldness of an upper-class Alice through the royal looking-glass was that she could never get back to that nice, cozy private nursery again. As James Whittaker, her self-confessed slave and hack-in-chief, might say with a nudge, you didn't know you were marrying us too, did you? This has some fairly horrifying implications, till death do us part, for one. Oh, that does not age well, that she would have a marriage to the press of till death do us part is a horrifying observation that came true. Oh. But it is so close to character that it is too bad that Whittaker, at 42, an acknowledged star among royal watchers, did not really say it. The dapper Whittaker has concentrated on the royal family for 14 years. In the process, he says contentedly, traveling around the world several times and moving at increasingly fatter salaries, from the Daily Mail to the Express to the Sun to the Star and finally to the Mirror. He likes the royals. They all mean a great deal to me, he says. He looks to the Queen for comfort because she is jolly solid. We'll miss a story if it's going to upset the Queen. No evidence is offered that anyone has done so. As for the other royals, reverence has its limits. I feel the public has a right to know anything we can tell them. My job is to report every facet of the royal beings in as much detail as possible. They are fair game. When game is afoot, royal watchers routinely engage in round-the-clock stakeouts. They have one here, photographer just with his long lens, just waiting for the right shot. Read lips with binoculars. Hire little girls to give flowers to the royals, and big girls, in the case of Prince Charles in his bachelor years, to give them kisses. Chase their prey at crazy speeds in high-powered cars. Ooh, this is hard to read. There has been so much of this mad motoring that the wonder is that no member of the royal family or the public has been killed. Can you believe? Can you believe the way this article predicts what would happen 14 years later? This is shocking. One reporter has even been known to steal a colleague's photos. Others lay out misleading clues to send teams from rival papers in the wrong direction. Here we have Princess Di pulling down her hat. It says, "Please, Di, don't. You're being stupid," said Charles to the camera-shy princess. Some of the things I do, I am not keen on myself for doing, Whitaker admits. He has a clear conscience, however, about the anorexia story, which ran under the banner, "Is it all getting too much for Diana? Rubbish." Countered the rubbishy news of the world. Thunderous denunciations of one another's outrages are standard among Fleet Street papers, and no one takes offense because it's all part of the game that readers follow with relish. Whitaker came out of the anorexia episode thinking well of himself. As the weeks went by and Diana did not appear to have the disease, he was able to take credit, and did, for preserving her health by a timely warning. Author Robert Lacey suggests that the press, with Whitaker very much in the lead, also deserves credit for forcing Charles to marry Diana. No, they don't. If they want credit for that, it's terrible credit. It is not simply that in the touchy period before the engagement, as Whitaker admits in a book about the royal courtship, that he gave her fatherly advice for dealing with the press, including himself. There will be times when I will ask you a question to which I need an answer desperately. I am telling you now, don't answer me. It's interesting that someone would tell her that a member of the press would tell her that. Prince Charles was over 30, explains Lacey, and his image as an adventurous young bachelor sowing his wild oats was getting worn out. It was the opinion of Fleet Street that he should settle down and do his duty. The press pushed Diana as a girlfriend beyond the reality of the situation in the early stages. Whitaker fell in love with her. Wow. The merciless over-coverage of Diana, including, Whitaker boasts, an 80-mile-per-hour car caper in which he drove alongside the car she was driving while a photographer snapped her picture. Y'all, all the ingredients are here. This makes me so sad. Oh. Showed the English public a maiden so sweet and wistful that the prince would have seemed a blackguard if he had failed to propose. It was this same improbable Cupid, however, that was part of the hit team that smudged the pregnant Diana in the Bahamas a year ago. A hit Fleet Street lingo is a good story, and a smudge is a photo. Oh. Okay, a hit team is a story team, and a smudge is a photo. Armed with jungle gear and survey maps, Whitaker and photographer Kenny Lennox entered the jungle at 5:55 one morning, just before sunup. They were on a patch of land opposite the beach where Charles and Diana were staying. Says Whitaker, "We crawled, carrying a lens the size of a bloody howitzer for a solid hour and a half. By 7:50 a.m. we were in position, a half-mile across the water from the beach." Oh, my word. Finally, Diana appeared at 11:20. When she turned up in a bikini, it was too good to be true. We also knew we'd be in trouble. Lennox started shooting. Diana was rubbing suntan oil on the prince's back. Sensational. I kept saying to Kenny, I've never done anything as intrusive in my life. But it was a journalistic high. I've never had such a buzz. You know, each human is responsible for considering the idea, if everyone chose to do what I am doing, Would it be a better world or a worse world? And then sorting out their choices accordingly. You know, if everybody picked a tulip from the community display, would that be a good thing for our community or a bad thing? Well, it would be terrible, because then none of us would get to enjoy the reds and the yellows swirling together, because there would be little picked off parts throughout all of it, or maybe none of them would be there at all. So I shouldn't pick one. That's the takeaway from that, right? What if everybody tossed their, Snickers wrapper off rather than tucking it in their pocket? Would that be good or bad for our community? All the way up to this, that he was being given in that moment the gift of his own conscience. And rather than obeying it, rather than heeding it and saying it, forget it, I'm ripping out the film, we're not doing this anymore, my own conscience forbids me from doing this. Instead, he said, sensational. In Nassau, Whitaker wired the pictures to London through New York City. Editors who saw them in New York, he marvels, made offers totaling £150,000. Money over conscience. That's how we get there. The huge figure is believable. Picture agency editors are more secretive than nerve gas manufacturers, but the rumor is that one big European weekly paid $35,000 for one of the bikini shots. Less sensational photos of Diana might bring anything from a few hundred to a few $1,000s, depending on the exclusivity and the news value of a commodity that fluctuates like pork bellies. A top freelancer among the dozen or so covering the royals full time may make as much as $150,000 a year. Whitaker admits to making less than $80,000. When the Sun and the Star ran the pictures of the royal tummy naked and protruding, the expected protests lit up the switchboards and the standard apologies were printed. The papers said jointly that they had run the photos out of deep affection for Diana. The Sun ran the photos a second time with the apology so that everyone would know what was being discussed. Creeping about in the undergrowth is not the style of the Daily Mail's influential gossip columnist, Nigel Dempster. He claims that he attends many parties that royals do, and when he is leaving, he sees Whitaker in the bushes. He insists that he is not a royal watcher, but a social policeman. About the time that Whitaker diagnosed anorexia, however, Dempster indulged himself with a lofty and fairly encyclopedic denunciation of Diana's faults. It was he who said that she was spoiled, fiendish, and a monster, and that she was spending too much money on clothes, shaming the nation's upper classes by having temper tantrums that drove staff to resign and making Charles desperately unhappy. Well, we are going to leave it there. We will do part 2 next time. I guess this one's going to release on Wednesday, and so we will continue the next one maybe on Friday would be my guess. You can look for it then. But I'm enjoying this story. I think it's shocking to see the way that when she looked like this, long before the eyes had lost their brightness, long before her smile had lost its sparkle, long before we had preteen William. This is baby William time, and already the very things that would lead to their unhappiness and to their demise and to her death were all here in this article. It's crazy to me. Let me know in the comments what you think. Had you ever heard this? Did you realize that it was this early that they were already diagnosing some of the problems? Wow. Let me know. I hope to hear from you in the comments, and we'll see you Friday to continue this one. Take care, guys. After that, we'll continue on with Palace Papers. I just was able to get to this today. We will continue on with Palace Papers after this bonus episodes. You guys have a great day. Bye.